Hey church, today we're moving into the book of 2 Samuel, and in chapter 1 we see a very drama-packed chapter. This is, if you've already read it, you know the place in which David receives the news that Saul and Jonathan are dead. So much to learn from this chapter, starting with the man who delivers the news. See, it's an Amalekite man, and he comes to David with this story, a little bit fabricated, as to how Jonathan and Saul died. He says he happens to be in the right place at the right time in the middle of this battle, and they're basically good as dead anyway. So Saul looks at him and says, will you come over and put me out of my misery and kill me? And he does so. He comes and he kills him, and he takes his crown and he takes his bracelet and goes straight to David. Now you can imagine that this journey to David, he is pretty pumped up. He thinks he's done something amazing, that he's going to get a nice little pat on the back. He's going to be rewarded in some way. He's excited for what he's done. And when he gets to David, he sees David react in a way that he was not expecting. We see that David mourns the death. And we're going to get to that in a minute, but I want us to just look at this man's life. And when I think about my own self, and how many times do I live out of a very similar place, which is a place of selfishness and pride. And maybe in your own life, you're thinking the same thing. You can relate, right? Whether it's, I want to be the first to tell someone something, or I've got the best gossip, or I don't care if it hurts this person as long as I move up. It's all about selfish ambition, selfish gain, a place of pride. And I know that God does not want us living from that place. As a matter of fact, his word says that pride goes before the fall. And so we can learn from this man, hey, this is not the way we need to be living our lives, from that place of selfishness. And in a few verses, he literally got the ultimate fall. David orders him to be killed. And so he came expecting to receive rewards for this big announcement he had and what he had done. And because it came from this place of lie and selfishness and pride, he actually runs into his own death. Now, if we look at David's life, we see an incredible attribute of him that we should be living ourselves by, this place of selflessness, right? We know that he was a man after God's heart, and this is just one of the ways in which we see that in his life, where you see, if anybody in the world had reason to be excited about Saul being dead, we know it was David, right? Just yesterday, John was telling us in his devotion that, telling us about jealousy and how jealous Saul was of David. He did not want to see David succeed in any way. I mean, they're enemies. And so David, knowing that one day he would be king, you would think that this was an exciting thing for him. But no, the Bible says he rips his clothes and he mourns the death of Saul. And he doesn't mourn the death of Saul so that Saul can see it, because Saul's dead. He mourns it because of the position of Saul, that God had appointed Saul. He mourns the fact that the Israelites are now in a really tough place right now, that their king has been killed. And he mourns the fact that his best friend, Jonathan, is now dead. So when we look at David, that's where we should be coming from. That's the kind of life we need to be living, right? Putting our selfishness aside and looking at the concerns and the needs of others. That's a beautiful thing. Now, you may be asking yourself, why did he even do this? I mean, clearly, again, he had right to act differently with this news, but he didn't. And here's what it comes down to. David knew that God had appointed Saul to be king. Now, he didn't want to get in the way of what God was doing. He knew that God's ways were greater than his ways. And so he knew that leadership had to play out however God wanted it to, not to intervene and to kill Saul or be happy that someone else did, but to allow God to move in his own ways, in his own timing. Now, for us, that's hard, and it was probably hard for David as well. But sometimes, even when God has given us maybe a vision for something, or something we know he wants us to be doing, and we just want to rush, and we want to push, and we want to kind of sometimes push ahead of God. Let this be a reminder that we need to step back and allow God to lead us in his own perfect time, in his own perfect way, and to live from a place of selflessness, glorifying God with our actions and putting others first. We'll see you tomorrow.